Hello, my name is Wayne Ergel. In this video, we're going to dive deep into MCP servers, specifically how to implement and use DataForSEO's new MCP server with n8n. A big portion of the video comes from a real discussion in our Watt AI community. Alex, Kim, and I explore the practical implementation of MCP servers. It's an actual conversation from one of our community calls. And just FYI, if you'd like to be part of discussions like this and get early access to workflows and resources similar to the ones that I'm going to show here, I'll leave a link to join the Watt AI community in the description below. So just a couple more things. One is a value proposition for you. As you may know, setting up your own MCP server can be technical and time consuming. DataForSEO has provided a video on how to do that, which I will link in the description below. But for our Watt AI community members, we've already done the heavy lifting. We have a DataForSEO MCP server set up and ready to use, so you don't have to worry about that. All you have to do is bring your credentials, which will connect you to your own account, and you'll be ready to use the new MCP server from DataForSEO. So as far as the video, here's what we're going to cover. You'll hear this community discussion where we break down what MCP actually is and why it matters. Then we'll show you exactly how to connect to and use the DataForSEO server, and finally demonstrate a practical approach by converting one of my existing HTTP-based keyword research workflows to the MCP server instead. All right, so let's jump into the community discussion and start with the fundamental question: what is an MCP server and why should you care?
Let's talk about MCP servers, and specifically we're going to talk about DataForSEO's MCP server. And with their MCP server, they don't host it on their own, and so they do have a public GitHub repository that will allow us to take that code and put it on our own server somewhere and have a ready to go DataForSEO MCP server, which we've already done that. We've made the installations and have it ready to go. But backing up a little bit, what is an MCP server? Previously, we would have had to make a bunch of HTTP requests, right, using this little magical node, right? So what we'd end up doing is, based on the API endpoints for DataForSEO we want to call, maybe it's the SERP results, maybe it's YouTube, we would have to have a bunch of these HTTP requests connected to the API agent so that it's hitting a specific URL or API endpoint, right? But what the MCP server allows us to do is it bundles all of that into one magical little node here. All right, so this is replacing the multiple HTTP requests. And because we're now hosting our own MCP server and using authentication, we have access to all the tools that are available from DataForSEO in their MCP server. And to show you what's available, if I do, you can give this node access to all of them, but you can see here that you've got the SERP results, keyword data. Oh, it's got, instant pay. Oh, this is nice. So you can see it's got a lot. There is a lot. So instead of, again, multiple HTTP requests, you have one node for the MCP server. And the difference here is that you're going to call those using prompts instead of multiple HTTP requests, right?
Yeah.
So here is a simple example. All I'm prompting is saying, go get SERP results for AI news. So it's going to go and search for AI news. And from a system message, again, you guys can see here, I just used the default "You're a helpful assistant" and only added the instruction to use the Watt AI DataForSEO MCP client. That's it. And
Yeah, so you're not telling it the actual DataForSEO tool.
I'm not giving the actual tool. I should,
Okay.
or this was an example, simple example, just so that there was a way for someone to see, oh, this is how I connect to the MCP server. The most important thing, obviously, here is the URL and the authentication here, where you're going to do a base 64 conversion of your username and password to create this token. Okay, so
and importantly, the URL has to have SSE on the end.
that's correct. Yeah. So yeah, this is a very specific endpoint, or URL for the accessing all those tools. So you know, and in order to get this spun up, I did have to make some modifications to their GitHub repository, and so I have forked their code, made some modifications so that it would actually properly install onto a server via Coolify, and then also work with as a specific SSE endpoint to be used within n8n. So there were some slight modifications, nothing major, no changes to the core functionality of the MCP server. It's more just how the server is being installed and called. So that's it. So if I run this real quick, if I run this real quick, you can see here, it's gonna take the instructions, do some thinking, and then go hit the tool, right? So let's see what the results are. So if we look at the output, I retrieved the SERP, here we go. It knew to go get SERP, and that was a keyword for the tool that it was going to use, right?
Yeah.
So search for AI news, as I said earlier. Here are the top 10 results, or top results. OpenAI's new AI browser, or Opera's new AI browser. Okay, I think that might be a little bit old, but either way. So you can see this is done, and it didn't require a HTTP request versus the MCP server calling the specific tool.
Okay, can I ask you? Let me ask you a question.
And before you ask that question, Wayne, this is, again, this is a very, very basic prompt, but I think when we're using MCP servers, the prompt engineering becomes a much higher factor in making sure that you are getting the results that you want from the workflow.
Yeah, no, exactly. Can you think of this as effectively what happened is you told it to get the search for AI news and it went out to the MCP server, but it ended up effectively finding the DataForSEO API for that thing that you want. Like it found their SERP API.
Well, that's the tool, right, Wayne? That's the difference here, is that instead of multiple HTTP requests, you have it bundled in a single MCP server. And so basically you're creating it found a SERP tool, right?
Yeah,
the terminology wise, consider the tool being a HTTP request, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's the
Well,
only difference.
You'll see why I'm asking that. That's effectively what happened. Okay, so I spent almost all day yesterday working with this to effectively replace a lot of what I did in my keyword research workflow with one MCP server. And what I found was it did not work as well as the HTTP requests. So if I did HTTP requests for related keywords and I said I wanted 25 of them, it gives me 25. And if I want 25 keyword ideas, it gives me 25. And I've been in contact with them about that, and I'll get to that in a moment. But what you can do in the prompt is where the DataForSEO API normally looks for a thing like limit, which would be the number of results you want. You can put that in the prompt.
Yeah.
And it gets into the request, but it didn't follow it as well.
Yeah.
And
I know.
And
yeah.
So it didn't return, the data quality back wasn't quite the same. And so I'm going to give it one more try. I'm going to just like deleted everything. I'm doing a new prompt. But then the other thing that you could do, let's say it all worked great and the data was exactly what you want. Then you could still, in this same AI agent, say, take those keywords and develop me a content plan, right?
Sure.
Like give me a title and for each one of them. So all of that used to be in several AI agent nodes, and now you could do it all in this one. But it's prompting becomes even more important than
and you know what? I think for the stuff that we're doing that's more data heavy, I'm not convinced that the MCP server is the right way to go. And this is the reason is the prompt, right? Because I forgot which workflow I was working on, but I was like going bonkers because it just wouldn't follow the prompt. And there's so many variables that go into the prompt and how the language model is going to interpret that prompt at the time that you're running that workflow.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're experiencing here is that one time it might hit 20 results, one time it might be 10 results. And
that's right.
For some reason, the prompt and the language model and the way it analyzed that instruction at the time that you ran that workflow changed from one run to the next. And so when we're trying to have very specific outputs and very specific number of results, etc. I don't think we're there yet with the MCP servers.
And the reason I was asking you about is basically finding that tool in DataForSEO is because I kept getting a lot of errors, and the error was this format for filtering. No, for sorting. This is the wrong format for sorting, so I can't give you information. But the thing is, and it's a subtle point, but it's important. The API itself, sorting is an optional criteria. If you don't put anything, it doesn't sort. It does whatever it defaults to is how it does it. But what was happening is every time the query was made inside the MCP server, it had a sort query in it that I didn't put there. And it was putting it in the wrong format. So it's supposed to be, this word and that word and this word. It was not doing that. So it would come back in error.
And did you give
so
it
then I created prompts that said, if you get an error, do it again. And if you get 3 errors, stop trying, but try up into 3. And then it was running the whole workflow 3 times, and it got to be a huge mess.
Yeah.
But what I said to the support guys at DataForSEO was, whatever you're doing inside your own server, you're putting that sorting request in there. You're not giving me a way to set it, and it's messing things up. So take it out, because it's an optional. You don't need it. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it might be baked into the MCP tool call.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, and they need to unbake it. They need to get
unbake it, man. The keyword data or the search? Wait, hold on a second. Is it the keyword data or this?
Labs, DataForSEO labs, that one, yeah.
Okay, let's.
Oh, I didn't know all that was there. I was wondering if this was somewhere.
Yeah, this is their.
That's when you told me they had it.
Yeah.
I didn't look at all that.
Let's see.
Because otherwise, and like you said, I think if you were really sort of needed exact, results, then you probably do want to go HTTP.
Yeah, right? I think so.
But
I
if
think
you're kind of for ours, but if you don't need it exact, then this takes a bunch of nodes and squishes them into one, which is
I mean, I think you could so you can see, like, you can do filter.
Yeah. Yeah, see, filters was the other one that was causing a problem, but it was
Mhm.
the sorting. And the
Yeah.
thing that was weird about it is their own sort of baked in thing was wrong. And I'm like, why would you do that?
Here's the thing, Wayne, is that I think developed, if we
Yeah,
say, hey, we want our own custom, let's say we want a Watt AI SERP module, right? Because
yes,
it's sorting weird and things like that, right?
yeah,
Like because we've already forked code, we could actually create our own module that's very specific to the search results that we want.
okay, yeah. And they
And then,
do talk about you being able to do that.
yeah, and I think that's what they're talking about here is that we can take their example and customize that module so
Okay.
that when we're looking at this list of tools here, right, instead of all, we might have a tool that it says, Watt AI SERP, something like that. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
yeah, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's
So
makes
that,
perfect
like,
sense.
because they've opened all of this up, and again, you know, consider that all these modules are now, all of these are what we would have been using HTTP requests for, right?
Yeah, yeah. Can you go into the SEO labs, data for SEO labs again, that folder, and then the tools, I guess, and then Google keyword research. Okay. So and then you can if you okay,
Yeah,
okay, yeah, yeah. Somewhere in there, there's a weird sort. I bet you. At least weird to me. Um,
in here,
yes, I think. I think that's there. It results order by. That's it. That's the culprit. I remember that. Sorry.
somewhere here, right? What? I'm not
Yeah.
seeing it.
Well, that whole field is called order
Oh,
by,
order by
right?
the.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so
see
if
where
you
they have
wanted to change this, yeah.
the example keyword underscore data dot. Yeah, right there.
Mhm.
That is wrong for some of these.
Mm,
Like it's
mhm.
saying the wrong thing in the query,
Mm, I see.
and then it's sending it to data for SEO, and it's replying, "Well, that's wrong. I can't do it."
Yeah,
So
so I would actually create a specific one, copy this file, right?
yeah,
Um, this site tool one, make our own version based on what you need, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
then have you call that tool specifically and see if that works. But
yeah,
like you spend so much time creating the HTTP request versions that are outputting the right information. And so trying to redo it for MCP, now you have to ask, is it worth it? I mean, we're exploring and figuring things out. And
yeah,
initially I was like, oh, they're not hosting their own MCP server. What a bummer kind of deal. But now I see it's actually to our advantage because we can create custom modules for the things that we need the MCP tool to do. So
yeah,
again,
yeah,
it's a combination of hard coding some of those requirements we might have,
yeah,
plus the prompt.
yeah,
And so, one of your concerns was, well, it's the number of results, et cetera, et cetera. Like those things I think could be variables added to the module on the code level, right?
yeah. Right.
So like something like this to figure out, well, where is it taking in? I'm sure I don't want to figure it out now, but there are somewhere in
Yeah,
this code is an opportunity to insert a variable for number of
yep,
results or number of queries, blah blah blah.
yeah.
And so then at that point, you don't have to prompt it. You just have to call the tool because you know that it's hard coded.
Right. Yeah.
Or
Okay.
or we can send that variable as a setting, right? And so, obviously this was a basic example, but as you and I know, our sort of default settings node, right,
Yeah. And I have one in mind.
can include query number, something like
Yeah.
that, right? And so you
Yeah.
set a value here, and then
Yeah.
that's what's fed into it.
Yeah, and that's what I did. They actually call it limit. So, and I can
Okay.
see that the limit, like when you click on I'm pointing at it as if you could see me, the
Hmm.
actual MCP server, you can see what it did. Like over there on the left, where it has input, has the query, that's the stuff, right? That was a search
Oh yeah,
engine.
yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
if you, I don't know if this one has the limit
Let's see, it only went
criteria.
depth to 10 here.
Yeah. But you could, if you in your set node had depth and you set it to
Mm-hmm.
20.
Include depth, right? And then here you would just put depth. Oops. Depth 30, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you should see when you run it again that it'll show
Yeah.
30.
So we've got 30 here. Yeah. For the article include 30, right?
And like, for the keyword research based ones, I would have a primary keyword in that set
Yeah.
set fields
Yeah.
node,
Yeah, for
and it
sure.
carries it in there. So you can sort of communicate with it.
Yeah, there
I
we go.
think they just have a little bit to work out on their end of
Mm-hmm.
just kind of overall
I mean,
operation. But what do
the thing that they have here is that you can actually, make the code changes and then push it up to their repository and ask them include your changes into the overall repository, stuff like that.
Okay, yeah, that's probably not going to happen
Not
for
not
my.
not something you're gonna do, but I'm just saying like that's just the
But,
way
but
that works.
so,
Okay, let's take a look at converting an existing workflow from HTTP requests to a MCP server. So this is a pretty complex workflow. As you can see, it does keyword research, sort of ideation, and writes articles. I'm going to look here at this keyword research part. So let's pull that over there. In the keyword research part, we're using DataForSEO. We are asking for related keywords. So each one of these are API endpoints that DataForSEO has. And you go to that, you send a request to that endpoint, and it pulls data. So here we're getting related keywords. There's a related keyword API endpoint, which I'll show you here when I click on that in a moment, but let me just quickly get through the rest of them. There's a keyword suggestion endpoint. There are keyword ideas endpoint, autocomplete, subtopics, and SERP data, which gives you people also ask. So when we say an HTTP request, this is the inside of that node. We have a URL here. So each one of those HTTP nodes has a URL. It's going to that. It's sending this JSON information. So primary keyword, what's your location? United States for me, English is language, and some other information. So you're doing that for each one. And for each one, you have to split out the results and then set fields and then send it, in this case, to Airtable. It could be Google Sheets, it could be NoCodeDB, it could be any sort of thing that allows you to send data to it and store it like a database or a spreadsheet. Okay, so that's what this workflow does, and it works really well. It does exactly what it's supposed to do, but let's take a look at what it would look like using the DataForSEO MCP server, and that is this workflow. And I can tell you I have spent a lot of time working with it. I'm going to blow it up a little bit more. Yep. And so I'll just run you through it. Right now it just has a manual trigger. So you click execute workflow, as you guys probably already know. I have workflow fields that are set. So similar to the HTTP request, the MCP tools need country, language, other data, it needs
it needs country, language, we need what is the keyword that we're searching for. I called that primary keyword, the number of keywords that we want to get back, the depth, which is for related keywords, and it basically has something to do with how many keywords you get back. This order by I'll talk about in a moment, and I'm storing everything in an OCODB base. So those are my workflow fields that I set. I typically do that at the first part of any workflow, just to set fields so that if I need to make changes, I can do them there. And then we have this AI agent, and when I say I've spent some time with this, I have, and what I have been trying to do, and it did not work, was replace the related keywords, the keyword suggestions, and the keyword ideas with one DataForSEO MCP server. And that did not work. It would kind of work. I had simple prompts, I had complicated prompts, I had, if it doesn't work the first time, go back through it and request it again prompts, all kinds of stuff. And it just didn't work consistently. It didn't bring back the number of results that I asked for. There was just lots of stuff that didn't work. So I changed to having 3 different tools. Now this isn't quite as good, of course, as having 1, but we do have 3 now, and we have still condensed the workflow and made it more efficient. So what we have here are the DataForSEO MCP server, and let's just show you what that looks like here in n8n. If we grab a MCP client, that's what these are. So it's just that node. I renamed each one of them. This one's the DataForSEO keyword suggestions. This one is keyword ideas. This one's related keywords. So for each one of them, you can go in and select the tools to include. So DataForSEO, let me just change this to all. DataForSEO has a bunch of endpoints. So if you say tools to include, you get all of them. But if you want to see what they look like, you say selected, and then drop down here, and you can see all of them. So they have many of their API endpoints in here already. Not all of them, but a lot. And most of them have to do with backlinks and keyword research. But if you know anything about DataForSEO, you know they have a ton of data points or endpoints, and not all of them were there. You can actually create them for yourself. They talk about that in their GitHub documentation, and you can reach out to them and ask them to add endpoints. I'd love to see them do the YouTube endpoints if they are listening to this. But anyway, you can quickly scroll through here, and I will. This is keyword ideas, so I'm going to be using that. Related keywords, keyword suggestions. So those are the 3 tools that I want to use, but all of these are here, and I'll let you get the workflow and you can explore this some more. So now I'm going to change this back to making sure that it uses the keyword suggestions, which is right here. Boom, click that. And so now in my prompt, you'll see here that I say get keyword suggestions, keyword ideas, and related keywords for the primary keyword. In this case, it's crate training for dogs. I'm going to change that in a minute. So it'll go out and it pulls it uses each one of the tools to get those associated keywords for this primary keyword. So it gets suggestions, ideas, and related keywords using those tools. Let me see, what does my system prompt say? So again, I had the longest system prompt I've ever had, and it was do this, do that. If it doesn't work, do this, and it just kept not working. So I ended up simplifying things quite a bit and going with this much simpler prompt. But what really allowed that to happen was to use these 3 different tool or MCP server nodes, with each one of them doing one of the tools. Now ideally, again, you'd be able to condense all of them into one,
And you can do something close to that. I did have this prompted at one point, and I said, just give me keyword research for this keyword. And it went and got information from related keywords, suggested keywords, ideas, all of that, and some other tools. But it wasn't consistent from one run to another, and there was no sort of controlling how many results you got back and that kind of thing. So I think as time goes on, that stuff will get better. But for now, at least what I found was, or is, that it works best to have one tool per MCP server. Okay, so let me see, NoCodeDB right now, this is what it looks like. This I just did quickly. My primary keyword is crate training for dogs, or it was when I ran it. I got these results back, and you can see this stuff, standard stuff. I'm going to run the workflow again, and I'm going to use a new search term, and I'm going to say best dog beds. Best dog beds. Okay, we're going to try that. Save, execute, and now it's running. I'll let it run, talk for a moment, but if it gets too long, I'll stop. So you see, just then it grabbed the tools. It went out and it got each one of them. So it got the suggested keywords, it got the keyword ideas and the related keywords, and now the OpenAI model is processing all the data. Now, DataForSEO, I was going back and forth with some questions with their support guys, and they recommended using Claude, and I try to use Claude in n8n, and I find that I get this message all the time that says, basically that it just stopped. I get a message that says something to the effect of you've made too many requests or something like that. I can't remember what it is, but it happens all the time. It never happens with me on OpenAI, so I tend to use that. Now, somewhat ironically, I use Claude way more than ChatGPT in the normal interface, so figure that one out. Anyway, so it ran through. We got 58 items. So if we go back here and we look at our master keywords table, we have to refresh, and now we've got best dog beds. Yay! And I also want to tell you guys, if you don't know, until recently, when you group stuff in, so I've ungrouped it. So now it's just a big long list of stuff, and you can go in and say group. And you can group by primary keyword, which is this keyword here. And now you have some organization, and it's easy to see. And thankfully, thank you, NoCodeDB, they have fixed this thing where previously it would only show you 10 results. So if you have 58, you'd have to scroll through or click through, 5 times to see all the results. Now they're all there, so that makes this so much better. But anyway, it did run through, so you can see that we've got ideas, suggestions, and related. Thank you. Got all of them. You get this data, search intent, all of that. One thing I want to show you, hopefully this will be there. Yeah. So if you click on the node itself, you can see the query. So this is the best, we made a query for best dog name or beds, location is United States, language is English, the limit, which is the number of results you're going to get back, is 20. And this is one of the things I kept having a problem with, because I'd put 50, I'd put 10, I'd put whatever number, and it had seemingly no effect on the amount of results that I got back. But now I feel like I am getting the right amount. Here's the tool name, and then here is the description of the tool. So that's a run through of, again, taking the 3 sort of sections here and combining them into one. When I was talking with Alex in the part you watched earlier, and I was saying I was having problems, it did all come back to this, apparently. What I'm seeing now is if I separate the tools, it works fine. I get the number of results that I expect. I would like to see it all come back in one, but how much do you try to cram in there and then have the AI agent try to be able to figure it all out? I don't know, but it definitely did make the workflow condensed and more efficient. We had a bunch of nodes here, and now we have less. And so I think that's better, and I think over time, as this stuff gets better, it'll be the way to go. The next thing that you could do, and I may try this but not in this video, is add this part. So the first part up here is doing keyword research. The next part in this workflow is categorizing the keywords. So I'm looking at the whole data set and say, okay, I want to look at quick wins, I want to look at authority builders, I want to look at giving some structure to this data and having a real use for it other than staring at it in a spreadsheet. And I do that here in this workflow by categorizing all the keywords and then coming up with a title and a description for an article to write for each one. Now, I believe you could go in here and add to this prompt and say, categorize all of these keywords and give me an article title and a description and whatever bit of information you might want for each one of the keywords. So that's something that you might want to try. I may try it here soon, but not for this video. Okay, I'm just going to wrap it up now, give you a few endpoints here. As far as from our community discussion, we found that MCP servers, and we've seen that with this workflow I just did, simplify complex workflows. Instead of a whole bunch of HTTP requests, you can do it all in fewer nodes. Prompt engineering becomes critical. Whereas before, I think the prompt was a little more segmented. You were looking at more complex prompts. Again, with the data for SEO stuff, you could do keyword research like I did, and then add to that same AI agent, do categorization and give me titles for the article. So your prompts could become more complex and therefore critical. As far as one of the things that initially Alex was a little disappointed with was that DataForSEO had decided to release their MCP server in the way they did, and that meant you had to host it. So you can host it on your local computer, or as he did in our, well, I don't know how he did it, but it's in our host somewhere. But what that does is, because all the code is here in GitHub, you can actually fork it, which he did, and then you can go into the different modules, and once you forked it, and make changes. So as he talked about in the video, if we wanted to customize it and always have it return this or that, or do a filter this way or that way, we can do that. So that actually turned into a benefit. So we're happy to see that. I do want to mention again that we have an MCP, the DataForSEO MCP server in the community. So all you literally have to do is join the community and then implement the workflow, use your credentials, and you have access to DataForSEO's MCP server. So if that's something of interest to you, hope to see you there doing it. So I'm just going to finish up here and say thank you so much for watching. I do sincerely appreciate it. If you don't mind and found some value, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing.